Hello, I'm Tim, the Suburban Dad, and today for this special Father's Day edition, I have my dad with me today. I guess that makes you the Suburban Granddad. So we're excited to talk about bourbon and what it means to be dad and all of that. Let's get started.
Let's get started here. This is my first YouTube ever, so I am pretty excited about this. A little nervous to be in front of all these millions of viewers here, but wanted to say first of all, I got the job of telling you that we'd like you to subscribe, like right under the picture there. If you would, that would be great. That way this can keep coming to you without you even having to ask. And you might even, at this point, click the like button so that you haven't seen it yet, but it's going to be very good today. So this will be good for the YouTube people to see that everybody really likes this program. All right, Tim. So
Absolutely.
what do we got?
Sounds good. Today we're going to get into some bourbon. I myself have just gotten into bourbon within the last year and a half or so. And as far as I know, you haven't been much of a whiskey or bourbon enthusiast until being around me, being around whiskey. Is that right?
Right.
So at this point, I mean, you'd still consider yourself more of a beginner. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's cool to be able to have you here today to try some bourbon with me and just talk a little bit, because I know there's a lot of people out there that are just brand new to it and they might not know all the terminology. They don't know quite how to pull the different flavors out yet or what to look for there, but hey, that's all right. You're still able to enjoy it. It's something we can bond over. It's just a nice little addition to our time together. So what has been as you've grown up and throughout the years, what has been your perspective of bourbon? Because it certainly has changed within the past decade or so. It's just exploded into this really popular thing, but I know it's not always been that way.
Right. Well, growing up, I'm trying to think in the early days when I was around my two grandfathers and my dad. I didn't notice a lot of bourbon. It was more beer for the most part. Back then, I know my grandfathers both enjoyed going to the Elks Club. That was the big social place there. My dad would go there at times too but again, I think it was mostly beer, but I think maybe my dad's dad at times tried some bourbon, and he might have had some of his own bourbon stash at his house there. But I guess when I think about the bourbon since those days, it's kind of like tennis shoes or children's breakfast cereal or something like that. The choices, like you say, have just exploded. It wasn't so talked about. They didn't have bourbon nights back then, where guys could get together. Of course, they didn't have the internet, to facilitate all the transactions for bourbon. So yeah, I don't recall. I think my Uncle Chetty indulged in bourbon a little more there, but it seemed to me back then bourbon wasn't the same kind of social drink that it is today. Yeah. You get together, it was maybe more of a private thing that somebody just wanted to have a bourbon at night or something.
It's almost more iconic now. I mean, you have all these famous brands, Buffalo Trace and Jim Beam and all. Now there's so many niche distilleries, micro distilleries, and so it's really expanded. So
you at times, as an enthusiast, if you're taking a trip somewhere, you might take a slight detour because there's some place that this is the only place where they sell a certain kind of bourbon. It wasn't that precise, I don't think, back in the good old days there, where people specialized that much. The science was so developed.
It's kind of like that was your drink. Oh, you're a bourbon guy. Oh, you're a vodka guy. Or you're a beer guy. It didn't really matter so much what brand it was per se, or it wasn't a big deal. Yeah, I got you. Oh, more of a dad question. What was it like with your because obviously I'm an adult now. What has been your journey like with being a dad? The different phases from baby to toddlers, diapers, and school age, and then now I have kids of my own and get to be part of
Right.
being a grandfather.
Well, first of all, it's all good. You know, even the tough part you're going through, the real nitty gritty work part of it. But I mean, because we need good dads, dedicated dads. The world needs good dads. But I guess, you know, the different stages. You know, I recall, you know, it's a lot of work at first, the first few years, and then you get to a point where, you know, you really you're on the lookout for different activities you can do with your sons, you know, like we used to do Indian Guides and Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Boys Club, sports and that. And then I remember, maybe the hardest part is like the adolescence, the teen years where you're moving toward your independence,
Sure.
you know, and trying to figure it out, and I'm trying to figure out too how to let you figure it out, how to guide you without with still giving you your freedom, and then into young adulthood, you know, and again there's some separation there. Typically, you know, you went away to college, and looking back, I wish I had connected with you more back then. I mean, you were way here. We grew up in Ohio, or Tim grew up in Ohio, so it was a journey to get here. But still, so I would say then it's really become neat now that I have moved to the St. Louis area here, Missouri, and I can see Tim a lot more often, you and your family, and we can share as adults more,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
just adult kind of things. We're equals in that way, and the grandchildren, it's always a joy to be a part of that, and to be able to help out with babysitting or having them over to my place or whatever it is there. So yeah, the different stages, they certainly especially as you're first getting into them, require some thinking in terms of where are we at now, you know, and he's not the little kid we started out as. And
Yeah.
and grandparenting is a lot of fun, you know, as you grandparents know.
That's right. You get the fun parts and then get to pass them back when
That's
it's
right.
all over.
That's
all
right.
over. Today, what I've got for us to try is the brand new release of Booker's Tagalong batch. Just came to Missouri either this week or maybe late last week, but it's newly released from Jim Beam Distillery. I really wanted to try this one, first of all, because I love Booker's. Booker's is my favorite line of bourbon so far. And this particular batch is really cool. It's called Tagalong. It's 2021-02, so the second release of this year, second batch. It's named for Booker No, who started this line, how he would tag along with his dad and his grandpa to learn about the distillery, learn what to do, and you know, it was a way that they were able to bond. So it was perfect for Father's Day. This one, Booker's, is strong. It's usually cask strength barrel proof level. So this is 127.9 proof. Pretty strong. As you can see, it is new in the box. I have yet to even take it out or much less open it. Let's see if I can do that without breaking something. Yeah. Now, fun fact with Booker's, you can tell which batch it is based on this secondary label up here. This is their main label, and then this one changes per batch. They change the color, and of course all the information changes. They put the name of the batch on there, which batch of and which year it is. So you can identify very clearly which one you like, which one you don't like as much. You must like all Booker's because they're all great. This one is brand new. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. We're going to have a pour, see what it's like.
They put a lot into the packaging.
This is quite involved. You saw the wooden box that comes in. They've got the special wax seal and the label, It's quite the entire package.
Now, is the wax seal, is that functional? Does that really do something good, or is that kind of more of a novelty for
I
this?
tend to think it's more of a novelty. There's a bunch of bottles that come this way. Maker's Mark comes this way. Knob Creek comes this way. There's a line called Pinhook that comes this way, but I think it's more for aesthetics because there's many other bottles that just have a little plastic seal around it. So I think it's just a way of keeping the cork sealed in there well. I kind of like the wax. I think it adds a little artsy flair to it, a little novelty. Now, one thing, especially with a bourbon this high proof, it's good to pour it and just let it sit for a little bit to open up. And that way you're not hit too hard with the ethanol content, the alcohol content on it.
You know, while we're waiting, Tim, I wonder if I could ask you about, you mentioned the proof, and we want to wait till it kind of simmers down a little bit or something.
Yeah.
For people like me who you've been very good about, like when I come over, Tim, whether it's before dinner, we have a little drink like this, or during dinner, after dinner, or if we're playing a board game or something. And I've tried different ones. Tim hasn't pushed anything on me. But he just invited me to try different ones. And I have to say, I've watched some of these other episodes where Tim sniffs it and smells vanilla or a fruity taste, and he really gets into it there. And I'd have to say the operative word, if you ask me, would be bitter. And the next would be still bitter. So what would you recommend for people like myself who, like I'm not dedicated to developing a love for bourbon, but I'm still open to kind of trying it and developing. How did you get beyond the bitter stage?
Yeah. It was a process for sure. Way back before I got into bourbon, really, I found that I liked Maker's Mark, just their basic bottle, and it's I think 92, 93 proof, something like that. It's fairly on the lower scale. It was one that I was able to drink and it wasn't overpowering. It was fairly smooth and sweet, and so it was something that I was able to drink and actually enjoy as far as a whiskey and kind of get acclimated to it, kind of put my toes in the water. And then what's interesting is at the time I had a bottle of Buffalo Trace, and at the time I thought that was too spicy. And now having it, it's one of the most mellow, silky bottles that I have. So there was a time where I kind of took a break from any bourbon for a couple years, and then Katie and my wife and I were out to dinner, and it was a Brazilian steakhouse, so a lot of meat, smoky. I asked the waiter, what is a good whiskey that's going to pair well with smoked meat like this? He said, I know just what to bring you. So he did. He brought me Knob Creek, small batch, and Knob Creek is 100 proof. It's a little stronger, but it had. I think it was the fact that I was eating the meat and the dinner with it, and it just brought out good flavor in the bourbon, and it wasn't too overpowering. I think if I was to just say, okay, I'm going to start bourbon by sitting down and drinking bourbon by itself, neat, it's probably like a white knuckle experience. You just, I'm going to learn to like this eventually. But I think having it with the food really made a big difference. And the right pairing, the right bourbon with the right type of food is going to make a big difference.
Yeah. So your taste buds, given the right process, change or kind of mature as far as appreciating or tolerating, not just tolerating, but appreciating. I don't know. Would you say you appreciate the challenge sometimes of some of these drinks, or the stronger ones, or?
At this point, it's not always so much a challenge as much as it is, I would say, an adventure, because you try. Okay, well, the flavors can be so different. But again, at first, I wouldn't think that. I'd think, oh, this one just hits me stronger. I don't notice much flavor difference.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to get to that point. So I would say the way to get into it is just ease your way into it. Start with lower proof bourbons and more smooth bourbons. Get some recommendations from friends or somebody who knows what to recommend to you. And yeah, try it with a meal. Don't just worry about drinking it neat. That's the way that I like to drink it the vast majority of the time. But
that's what you call it when it's just straight.
Yeah,
that's
straight with
neat.
no ice, no
Okay.
water, anything, just neat. But yeah, try it with food, and maybe you do need to add a little ice to bring it to your preference. Today we're just going to go full bore and just drink it neat. But
All right.
on your own time, you can experiment a little bit. So now that it's sat for a little bit, go ahead and check it out. The one thing that I like about Booker's is how you can look and just see the color. It's a very rich, brownish, amberish color.
Mm-hmm.
It generally means that it's going to be a more robust flavor as opposed to one that's more lighter colored, thin looking. So yeah, and then also a tidbit I did learn was when you swirl the whiskey, you look to see, does it form little rivulets or what they call legs going down the glass. If it forms a lot of legs right away and it just trickles down real fast, that's a thinner whiskey. It's not going to be as robust. Versus if it just kind of hangs out up there or it takes a while, it's going to be more thick and more complex. So on this one, there is still a very thick line of bourbon across the top here. It's just now starting to drop a big, wide leg of bourbon down the side. So this is looking very promising to be a...
Is it like viscosity?
Yeah,
Is
essentially.
a little thicker, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So when I smell it, wow, so this one smells very fruity to me right off the bat. I do get a sense of the alcohol content on it, so that's definitely evident. Now, I must say I'm getting over a cold this week, so I'm not at my optimal right now for scent detection, but I can tell still that it's a little fruitier, a little sweet on it.
Fruit's not coming in for me, but that's all right. It's all good.
Yeah, some vanilla in there, but Booker's usually isn't super sweet and fruity, so this will be interesting to try. So, cheers to you. Wow. So, I have some immediate
feel
thoughts.
the proof.
Yes.
It's proof that it's strong.
Do you remember what they call that warming sensation? Have you ever heard that term?
Nothing.
It's called a Kentucky hug. Bourbon just warming you up along the way.
Yes. Warms the cockles of your throat there.
The bronchioles of your lungs. So obviously, yeah, it's strong for sure. It's high proof. Do you pick up on, even generally speaking, any sort of flavor? So flavors could be something like more spicy flavored, more sweet, more more fruity, smoky, those kind of general things. It doesn't have to be, graham crackers and roasted cherries.
Well, I'm still not tasting it.
Okay, that's all right. So for me, for sure, when I actually taste it, the fruit really comes out a lot. So this is, it's very, like right away, it's a burst of fruit and then a little bit of spice, and it kind of trails off. It doesn't have a super long finish compared to some of the Bookers, but still I do get that warming sensation for sure. Fruit on the beginning, I get more like a tropical fruit flavor as opposed to like apples or cherries, berries, something like that.
Do they actually put any fruit? Is that part of the process?
That's a great question. They do not. So with bourbon, it's literally they have a bunch of different grains that it's called the mash bill with the different grains. They add some yeast and water to that, and they ferment it, produce the alcohol, and then they distill it to increase the alcohol level. And then they put it right in the barrel, charred oak barrel. And it's the interaction of the alcohol and the wood that creates the different flavors. And so as the environment gets warm and then cold, the alcohol seeps into the wood and it gets drawn out and back and forth and back and forth, and that's where all these flavors come from. So yeah, they don't actually add, they don't just throw fruits in there and get the flavors that way. So it's kind of crazy how you can have all these different flavors and it just be coming from the wood. So
it's amazing to me that how they have figured that out through trial and error.
Certainly.
How to use that wood or different kind of barrels or whatever to. There's really a science to it,
Yes.
That leads them, especially to duplicate it, to
Yes.
kind of to make it, regular like that.
Absolutely.
Systematize it.
Consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I like about Booker's is every batch is different. They choose not to try and make it uniform and the same. They choose to make it different and unique. So it's fun. You never know what the new batch is going to be like. The last batch, first one of this year, was totally different. Nothing fruity at all. Very caramel, vanilla, more of a woody oak taste to it. So this one, for all you Booker's fans or people wanting to know what this bottle is like, very fruity. Kind of reminds me of the 2018-04 batch. Kitchen Table was another Booker's that I thought is very fruity. So this one I can definitely drink it neat and appreciate it. I am curious what a little bit of water or ice might do for it. Matt, if you're watching, sometimes ice can help bring out the flavors. So don't be too quick to judge.
I was thinking, we talked a little bit before we started here. You asked me about my favorite or maybe most unique gift, as a father there. And I thought back, this was kind of funny, but actually it was my 50th birthday. So it wasn't Father's Day, but it was like a special honoring of me on my 50th birthday there. 2001. And I'm giving my age wage. You can do the math there and figure what I am now. For that momentous occasion, my wife wanted to get a special gift for me, and she knew I liked sports, and it just coincided that year. The Cleveland Indians, we were very close to Cleveland at that time, and that was our team. And they don't make the playoffs that often, but they made the playoffs that year, and they were playing the Seattle Mariners. And they're doing pretty well. Seattle had a better team. I think they were up to a point where if they had this one game, if they won it, they would win the series and go on from there. And so my wife and there was a lady that at that time, 2001, who was the most savvy person. She knew about how to look online to purchase tickets. It was Suzanne, you remember her?
Yeah, sure.
And so Suzanne looked it up, and by the time they thought of this idea, the fans had already been scurrying around, buying tickets and that, so there weren't too many left. And all they had were individual tickets dotting the stadium here and there. And so they didn't know if that would work for me, but they bought me one ticket for the bleachers. And even with the new stadium that we had at that point, even the bleachers were a pretty good place to see the game. Even though, I preferred to be there with my family, but I still was thrilled to get that ticket to be able to go to possibly the deciding playoff game of the Cleveland Indians. So I went up to the game by myself, but it was almost like being there with family. The stadium, it was so electric. We hadn't been there that many times, and I felt like these total strangers were my cousins or whatever. I was talking to them, carrying on. We were all just together, excited. And then the Indians, we had our top pitcher, Bartolo Colon. He was going against their top pitcher, I forget his name. And we were winning most of the game. So it was all good. were about to clinch the championship, and then in the 8th inning, they erupted for about 2-3 runs. I think somebody had a throwing error, and but it was a very good game. Yeah, very memorable. That was, like I said, I would have preferred to have all my family there, but even I'm the kind of guy, I can sometimes do things by myself, especially with sports, and like I said, the whole city of Cleveland was my family on that day, so that was the one memory that comes to mind there.
Well, as a dad now, I can appreciate the idea of just being on your own for a little bit, the freedom that allows. So it doesn't seem so weird to me.
Especially at the stage you're at there.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't get too many of those moments.
That sounds kind of great.
I had one other question for you, Tim. This is not a dad question per se, but I think you've been a part of one of these, maybe more, of a bourbon night. Maybe people have heard of that. I've never been to a bourbon night. I haven't longed to be at a bourbon night, but I just wondered, what do people do? I mean, they drink bourbon as part of the evening there, but when somebody has a bourbon night, and you have a bunch of guys, usually, I guess, what's it like?
So generally, everybody brings, somebody hosts it. Could be at somebody's house. Everybody brings a bottle to share with the group. Depends on how generous you're feeling. Maybe it's a special bottle like Booker's, or maybe it's a more common but still tasty offering. That's a perfect opportunity to try different bottles, even if it's just a couple little sips, to kind of get a sense of, oh yeah, I do really like this one, or oh no, definitely glad I didn't buy that one. And at least for me, being the nerd that I am, it's a great opportunity for me to just spew my bourbon knowledge and talk about all the intricacies about what I'm tasting, or the information about the distilleries behind the bottle, that sort of thing.
Now, the one you went to, was there conversation like that among the guys?
There was a little bit, not quite as much of the intricacies of the bourbon so much. It was more of a way to connect with other. They were basically all other dads there, which was cool.
Yeah,
be able to connect that way. It's a great social opportunity. Believe me, I'll have a drink on my own if I must, but being able to share it with other people is really, it just adds so much more to it. So it's just a great way to connect with other people, and so that was my experience there, was connecting with some other dads, sharing perspectives on fatherhood, and just kind of being able to, open up a little bit with each other. Inhibitions go down the more bourbon is tasted, and it's kind of a great way for dads to just bond with each other that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my experience with bourbon night so far. Well, for all you dads out there, hope you have a very happy Father's Day weekend. And as you heard before, make sure you're plugged in to be tuned in for next episode. And as always, cheers.